Today we're going to be looking at how we date fossils to give us an accurate tree of life. Remember, evolution shows the change in species over time, so how do we know when those changes exist? We're going to see that there are two ways that you can date fossils: relative dating and radioactive dating. Let's first take a look at relative dating. Why we date fossils. Dating fossils allows us to create a timeline of organisms. From this, we see that 99% of all species that have existed on the planet are extinct now. There are two ways we can date fossils. Fossils have allowed us to see the wide variety of species that may have existed at one time or another, but this is only a snapshot as fossils are incredibly rare. From this, we can assume that there have been many major extinctions and many major species explosions. From the fossil evidence that we've gathered, we've seen that 99% of all species that have existed at the planet are now extinct. The method in which we date fossils allows us to create an accurate timeline of how and when the organisms existed. Relative dating. Relative dating uses a fossil's location in rock layers to determine its relative age. Not give an exact date, only compares it to other fossils. Older rocks are lower in the layers, while younger rocks are higher. Relative dating uses sediment buildup to determine the age of fossils. As a fossil is created, it sits in a rock layer. As new dirt is created, it overlaps it, thus meaning that older rocks and fossils are lower in the dirt, and younger ones are higher. Once again, though, this does not give us an exact date, only relative compared to other organisms or a geologic timescale. Radioactive dating. Radioactive material is taken up as an organism lives. Once the organism dies, it stops taking up that radioactive material. All organisms take up the radioactive material while they're alive. Once they're passed, however, it stops and slowly begins to break down. You yourself are also taking up this radioactive material. However, it is not causing you any harm. From this point, radioactive material breaks down at a set rate. By comparing how much is in the fossil, we can pinpoint the exact date of the fossil, give or take. Radioactive isotopes break down at a set time pattern, thus allowing us, using simple mathematics, to figure out from how much is left over to how much existed at the time of the animal's death, giving an accurate time of death. The half-life of radioactive material is the amount of time it takes for an amount of radioactive material to break down to half its original content. Different radioactive isotopes have different half-lives. Some of them are longer, some are shorter. By comparing and using these, we can accurately determine when a fossil died at a certain point. Let's try this one as an example. Let's say this fossil is found to have 0.5 milligrams of a radioactive material within it. Based on math, we figured out that the organism at the time of its death had 20 milligrams of the radioactive material in its body. If the half-life of the material is 5,000 years, we simply need to figure out how many half-lives have gone by and divide it by 2 until we get to the relative or close amount of the radioactive material. We then simply divide the amount by 2 and count how many half-lives it takes for us to get close. In this case, 4 half-lives. That means it's degraded 4 times. We take this number and then multiply it by the half-life, which is 5,000 years, and end up that the fossil is 20,000 years old. We now have the exact date of this fossil, which is 20,000 years old. Now we've seen how radioactive dating works for it. It's pretty simple math if you kind of want to do it. It's just to make sure that you don't end up with any kind of, just calculating the half-lives first, and then multiplying it by the average half-life of the radioactive material. You yourself have radioactive material building up inside of you. And long ago, if you're lucky enough to turn into a fossil, they may see you in the future and be able to determine your exact age. Alright guys, with that being said, think about it this way. Are there some errors in radioactive dating? Look forward to talking to you guys tomorrow. Have a good one.